Okay, so we're going to be doing the verb quizzes in the context and agreement chapter for my book, Overcoming SAT and ACT Math, or not ACT Math, sorry, English and Grammar. So let's start with this one. So remember, with the verbs, we're talking about verb tense, and we're also considering like subject verb agreement sometimes is also like the main things that they're going to be testing you on. So let's start with number one. So we're deciding if this portion should be no change or if we need one of these. So Cleopatra, one of the most celebrated figures in history, was born in 69 BC as the last pharaoh of, I think, Ptolemaic Egypt. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Her reign is marked by political intrigue, romantic relationships, and vast cultural influence. So if you didn't already know who Cleopatra was, you would still know that this is in the past because they gave you that context in the previous sentence of the year she was born. So it can't be is her reign is marked because it's not currently taking place. So we need something that is past tense, and also it needs to match her reign in that her reign is singular. So it would be C, was marked. Now, for number two, it says she speaks multiple languages and was known for her intelligence and charm. Again, she's long gone. She was born in 69 BC, so we can't say speaks present tense. And that also eliminates are speaking and speak, so it would just be spoke, B, for this one. For number three, it says despite facing numerous challenges during her reign, Cleopatra proved to be a shrewd and effective ruler. So that seems fine, but let's just look at our other options just to like rule them out. So proves is present tense, so is prove, so we can't do that. And we wouldn't say we're proving, we just need the simple past tense, which would be proved. So it is correct, A, no change. Okay, number four, one of her most renowned relationships was with Roman ruler Julius Caesar. So it's using past tense, so that looks good. And let's see, what were the other options? Is with, were with, has been with. So this does need to be past tense, but then it also needs to match the singular subject, which is one of her most renowned relationships, that portion. So it has to be singular past tense, and you can't use has been with because it's not that's called the, what do you call it, the present perfect. And you can only use that when an action is beginning in the past and is still relating to something that's happening in the present, which is not what we have here. So it would have to just stay the same, was with. Okay, for number five, it says her relationships often intertwine with her political alliances and had profound implications for the Roman and Egyptian empires. So her relationships, that's plural, so we need to make sure that we have a plural verb, and it has to be referring to the past as well. So the only one that is even in past tense would be B, so it has to be B here. For number six, the fate of these two empires rests in many ways on the decisions she make. So we're just focusing on number six for right now. So rest, let's look at the subject. The subject would be the fate, like the singular fate. So a lot of these, like, you'll get confused because they put like these extra little parts like of these two empires because they're wanting you to pick what's closest to the verb as your subject. You have to remember that that's not the subject always. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. The subject is whatever the verb needs to be referring to or matching. So the fate is singular. So it has to match with the verb being singular as well. And then it has to also be referring to the past. So we need to have it be in past, and that would just be be, rested. That's simple past tense. So now within that same sentence, we're now going to focus on fixing number 7 if it needs to be fixed. So the fate of these two empires rested in many ways on the decisions she make. So she has to match with make. So she is singular, so that means that the verb has to also be singular. So we can't have make because that's plural. So it would have to be makes or made, and then because it's, sorry, I'm trying to like be careful with the wording that I use. And then because it's taking place in the past, it has to be in the past tense. So it would have to be C, made. Okay, now for number 8, ultimately, after a series of tragic events and political maneuverings, Cleopatra's life ends in 30 BC. So ends needs to match up with life, which is singular, and it also needs to be in past tense because it's saying it ended. It kind of gave it a little bit away in 30 BC, which was a long time ago. So that's in the past, hence why we have to use past tense. And it would be ended. So it would be D. Again, you wouldn't pick B, even though that's technically like one of the kind of like referring to the past ones. It's not something that's ongoing. That starts in the past and is ongoing. So we can't have B. It would just be D. But just so you know, on the exam, they're most likely, I mean, they could really throw anything out at you, but they're typically not going to test you between like picking between those types of things. It's usually like simply like singular versus plural and past versus like present, that sort of thing, or future. Not between like the really like finicky ones like this. So then for number 9, it's kind of cut off on the next page since I'm zoomed in. So it's referring to number 9 right here, and I just kind of wrote the answer choices, the other options for the answer choices down here. Her legacy, however, continues to captivate the imagination of people around the world, and her story has been retold in countless ways. Now, it would be no change, like you would keep it as has been retold because it's the singular story and we're referring to an action that began in the past and is still relating to or happening in the present. Like people are still retelling our story in the present. Okay, now we're on verb quiz 2. So we're going to fill in the blank with the correct verb. Both Cleopatra's political acumen and her relationships with influential Roman figures blank her a pivotal character in history. So it would be, let's see what the options are. Makes, make, making, made. Okay, so for number 1, it's going to be that we're referring to, like, the verb has to match both Cleopatra's political acumen and her relationships. So we have to have it be plural. And then it's also going to have to be in the present tense because it's not like she was just a pivotal character in history in the, like, past. It's like it's still happening now. So it would have to be plural, present, which would be make. Okay, number 2, despite facing numerous challenges during her reign, Cleopatra was a shrewd and effective ruler. Either her charm or her political maneuvers blank responsible for her powerful alliances. So we have either or right over here. And that means we're going to have to do, it's going to have to be plural, and then it's going to have to either her charm or political maneuvers, and it's going to have to be past because it's saying like in the past with her past alliances, like in the past it was responsible for that. But remember we have a plural subject, so that means it has to be were. So, oh wait, hold on. Were, I lost my mind for a second there. Yeah, were is plural. B. Number 3, there are some assigned reading books that high school students enjoy reading. One of the most popular books, blank, 1984, by George Orwell. Okay, so one of the most popular books, we have one here as the subject, and one, that means it has to be, singular, and it has to be present because it's not in the past. They're saying like the students enjoy reading it like still today. So it would have to be present singular, which would be C. Okay, so Cleopatra, we're doing number 4 now. Cleopatra, one of the most celebrated figures in history, was born in 69 BC. The number of accounts and stories about Cleopatra. So this is one of those the like less common ones where it's the number. You probably won't get this, but it could be tested. The number is supposed to be singular when you have that being your subject. So you would have to pick singular, and then let's see the number of accounts and stories about Cleopatra, blank vast, but a number of them. Okay, so is vast because it would have to be because like the stories and accounts are still like in the present. So even though like the stories and stuff happen in the past, it's like they're being told in the present. So it'd have to be C. And then number 5 is for the rest of the sentence. So the number of accounts and stories about Cleopatra is vast, but a number of them blank on her influence and intelligence. Okay, now this one again, a number is different than the number. This was in the notes section for the context and agreement chapter. So a number is actually going to be plural. So that means we have to have the verb being plural and but a number of them blank on her influence and intelligence. So let's see, the only plural ones would be are agreeing or agree. So it would have to be just the regular present plural, which would be agree. And remember, we only use like is or are agreeing for ongoing actions, which we don't have right here, which is why it's just like the regular simple present tense. So number 6, the CEO relies on advice from several experts before making any major business decisions. The council of her advisors blank regularly to discuss her company's financial affairs. So here the subject that needs to match is going to be the council. So the council would be singular. So that's like when you're talking about like a group of people like that. Again, this was in the notes if you want to refer back to it. Like we have here with the council, it's going to be singular because you're referring to like that one council. So the council, it would be meets because it's saying the council of her advisors meets regularly to discuss her company's financial affairs. Like it's happening like regularly now. Like the council meets regularly. Number 7, Cleopatra, one of the most celebrated figures in history, was born in 69 BC. Cleopatra blanked numerous encounters with other leaders throughout her life. So this would be in the past because like she's not currently having these encounters with other leaders. So it definitely has to be past tense. So then it would have to be had, which is C. Okay, now we're on verb quiz number 3, and we're going to start with number 1. In recent years, innovative marketing strategies have emerged with technological advancements. One such strategy that companies researched is advertising to individuals during their sleep by leveraging the capabilities of smartphones. So in the previous sentence, remember, this is why it's called the context and agreement chapter, because context matters. So in the previous sentence, they said have emerged. So we need to match that context here. So it would be have researched, C, because nothing's like changed in terms of like, there's no like, maybe like a kind of like a flashback or something would be an instance where like maybe you go from like telling a story to like the present, and that could be like a tense change, but we don't have anything like that going on here. So it has to just like keep the same context, keep the same verb tense, and be have researched. Number 2, when the concept introduced, it faced significant criticism from both the public and ethics committee. So this definitely can't be present tense because it's saying like, it's already talking about like the criticism, like the reaction from the public and ethics committees. So this already happened. The concept was already introduced. So it can't be is introduced, introduces. It can only be like, if we're thinking just past tense, then it can only be no change or D. Then we have to take it a step further. When we say like when the concept introduced, I mean, that just doesn't sound right, but I'm trying to think of like the wording for it. Okay, so I just realized this was actually not in the notes because they don't typically test this, like the differences, the distinction. I did include stuff just to like be safe, but this was one of the ones that like didn't make the cut. Past progressive is what the term is for this verb tense, and it's really like rare to like I don't even think I've ever seen it tested. I don't think it is tested at all, or has ever been tested at all, like in terms of like determining a distinction like this. But again, like this is supposed to be like mastering, so that's why I put it here. I just forgot to put that little like disclaimer, I guess, in the notes. But so this is something called past progressive, and I wrote down here, you can add this to your notes if you'd like, that it's an action that it could be like one action or more than one action that was in progress at a specific point in the past. So like it is past tense, but it's like a different kind of past tense where you're saying, okay, like here the concept was introduced at that specific time in the past. So that's why you're using past progressive and not just like the regular simple past of introduced. Okay, for number 3, advertisers argue that this technique will allow them to communicate directly with the subconscious mind, thus influencing buying behaviors more effectively. Okay, so advertisers argue that this technique needs to be what's matching whatever we pick for the verb part right there. So it would have to be singular. Well, actually, singular doesn't even matter here because it's actually like the conditional one where you would have to do, what's it called? It's just regular conditional. The conditional tense where you would have to say would plus like whatever the verb is. So would allow would be the correct version here because it's something that has not happened but could happen, like a hypothetical situation. That's when we use that conditional. Like they're saying the technique like hasn't like it hasn't allowed them to communicate directly with the subconscious mind or whatever, yada yada yada, but it could. It's like hypothetically it could happen. So that's why you use the conditional, which is like would and then followed by the verb. And then number 4, while the idea seems somewhat dystopian, preliminary studies shows that sounds played during specific sleep phases can influence dream content. So preliminary studies has to match with whatever we put there in the blank. So preliminary studies is plural, like there's multiple studies, so it definitely can't be shows. So preliminary studies show because it's still show like it's happening now. So it would be show because that's plural present tense. Sorry, it's hard to remember like all of these exact names and terminologies while I'm trying to explain this. So then let's go to, let me take a second to write down the answer choices so we can see at the same time. Okay, so for number 5, it's however the efficacy of this method in genuinely impacting purchasing decisions remain uncertain. So we need to have the verb match what it's referring to, which is the efficacy. Even though there's like a bunch of words in between, remember it's still talking about the efficacy. So that would have to be singular, and it's present, just simple present tense. So the efficacy remains would have to be the right one. Okay, number 6, many experts argue that sleep advertising may border on invasion of privacy. So many experts, like there's several of them, so it looks good that it's plural. So it definitely can't be argues. And then it's, let's see, are arguing would, that's not it because it's not saying like it's an ongoing thing that they are arguing. It's just like the simple present tense. So it would be just argue, no change. Okay, for number 7, it says, well, let's just keep reading. They believe that a person's dreams, being highly personal and intimate experiences, should not become commercial playgrounds. Advocates for this technique, however, insist that with appropriate regulations, sleep advertising can be both ethical and beneficial. So in the insist portion has to match advocates, because they're the ones like doing that. They're the ones doing the insisting. So advocates, there's multiple of them. It's plural, so it definitely can't be insists because that's a singular. So it would be plural present tense because it's like happening now, and it's happening now, and it's plural, so it has to be plural present tense. I think I said that right the first time, but just in case I repeated it. So then we have, that would just be B. Okay, so then let's go to number 8. So, whoops. There we go. Okay, number 8 says, as technology continues to advance, the line between what is possible and what is ethically acceptable become increasingly blurred. So let's see, as technology continues to advance, it definitely can't be become, like, just, I know I say like don't hear it, but like I've been doing this so long that I can just see that. So I'm trying to think of like the actual reasoning when I explain this. So give me a second to think of my words. So the wording I'm looking for is that it's referring to line. So line is singular. So if anything would have to be becomes, which is kind of like why you heard me like mess up when I was reading that the first time to like automatically correct it. So it can't be become because that would be plural. So it doesn't match the singular line. So then let's look at our other options. So is becoming, became, has become. So then it can't be became because we're not doing like past tense. So it's saying as the technology continues to advance, so like this is an ongoing present thing that's happening. So we have to use the present progressive for that. So it would be is becoming. And instead of like, it wouldn't be like are becoming because are is not singular. Is a singular and matches our subject, the line. So present progressive with singular right there. Okay, for number 9, since I'm zoomed in, it kind of got cut off. So here are the other answer choices, like we could have no change or one of these guys for number 9. Only time will tell if this approach took root or if it remains a controversial blip in the history of advertising. So only time will tell if, so this approach is this one singular approach. So singular, it has to be singular for our verb has to be singular. And then it's not something that already happened or an ongoing action. So it would have to just be the simple present singular tense is what it's called. So that would just be takes. Okay, now we're on verb quiz number 4. So for number 1, it says, for thousands of years, historians and archaeologists has struggled to uncover the identity of the Sea Peoples and Confederation of Naval Raiders who attack the coastal cities of the Mediterranean region during the end of the Bronze Age. So the underlying portion is referring to historians and archaeologists. So that's going to have to be plural. And so it definitely can't be has. And then it's going to have to be either like based off of that. Well, it could be technically past tense too, but basically we can eliminate the no change option was my point. Now, this is something that while it's like historians and archaeologists are still struggling with it now, it said in the beginning for thousands of years. So like it's saying from that portion, like the struggle, like them struggling started in the past, but it's still continuing into the present today. So because of that, we have to use the present perfect. So that would have to be have struggled. And then number 2 is the attack portion of that sentence. So it's talking about a confederation of naval raiders who this happened in the Bronze Age. It tells us at the end of the sentence. So this was happening in the past. So it definitely can't be present tense. So the only past tense one here would be D. Okay, for number 3, these invaders mentioned in several Egyptian sources, bringing great turmoil to the ancient civilizations of the Eastern Mediterranean. So, these invaders, that has to match with the underlying portion. If we need to like do something with singular and plural, so if that ends up happening, it has to be plural. So, and then it's saying that that in the past they brought turmoil to these ancient civilizations. So it can't be like, it's not in the present. Remember, like they've already told us this is a group of people that we're talking about in the past. So it would have to be brought. So the correct answer would be D here. Okay, for number 4, it could be no change or one of these options right here that I wrote. While the origin of the Sea Peoples is debated, some scholars believe they come from regions of modern day Turkey. So it's not saying that like it was debated in the past. It's saying like, because it's saying when they're talking about debated, they're also talking about some scholars believe, which is happening now in the present. And it has to match the origin, which is singular, so it would have to be is debated. Okay, for number 5, it could be no change or one of the choices I wrote here. So while the origin of the Sea Peoples is debated, some scholars believe they come from regions of modern day Turkey. Now remember, the Sea Peoples that we're talking about aren't like, even though they are referring to modern day Turkey, the Sea Peoples were people that existed a long time ago, not right now. So they wouldn't be like coming to these regions right now. So you can't use present tense. So it would have to be came. For number 6, it could be no change, like we keep it as is, or one of these options. So it says their aggressive tactics and formidable naval power would become legendary. So for this one, it would have to be like, remember when they're talking about their aggressive tactics and formidable naval power, they're referring to the Sea Peoples who existed a long time ago. So for this one, you would probably be like confused between like keeping it as is for would become or choosing became. Now now the Sea People, even though they lived in the past, like I was kind of just like talking through that, I just realized that might have confused people, that I just said that. So let's start over with this one. So their aggressive tactics and formidable naval power, so even though the Sea People exist in the past, that's kind of like irrelevant here because it's saying like they already like it was already legendary, like they already became legendary for this. So it's not like something that's happening like just right now or anything like that. And then it wouldn't be would become, because remember that would be the conditional tense, which means that we would be referring to something that has not happened yet but could happen, like hypothetical situations, which this is saying it already happened. So it would have to be became. Okay, number 7, by the time they had encountered the powerful civilization of ancient Egypt, the Sea Peoples had already established a fearsome reputation. Remember, you're probably not going to be tested on this like on this tense in this way. So if you got this wrong, don't worry too much about that. But this is the one where you have to determine like what happened first. So they're talking about like 2 different events that happened, like the 2 underlying portions are part of 2 separate events. So the one that happens first, like when you're describing 2 events that happened in the past, or 2 things that happened in the past, the one that happened first is the one that you use had plus the past participle with. So we can kind of already skip to 8 because we know that that's what happened first. So like the Sea Peoples had already established a fearsome reputation that would be had with the past participle. And that's what happened first, because like they already had that reputation before, like, and by the time that they encountered the powerful civilization of ancient Egypt. So number 8 is part of what's happening first. So it has to be B, had already established. And then you would use the simple past tense for the other event, that did not happen first. So that would just be simple past D, encountered. Okay, now for number 9, Egyptian records tell of great battles where pharaohs had been led their armies against these invaders. I mean, that already sounds super wrong, but remember, don't go by ear on these exams. So let's see. So Egyptian records tell of great battles where pharaohs. So this has to match pharaohs if we have to make a determination between like singular or plural. And hold on, I've just lost my place. Egyptians tell of great battles where pharaohs, and then it would have to be, let's see, it would be led, because pharaohs is plural, and then it would have to be happening in the past, like they led them in the past, so it's the plural past tense. It's plural and in past tense. So it would have to be B. Okay, number 10. Oh, let me write it. So for number 10, I wrote the options here. Like we could do no change, keep it like this, as is, or like one of these options. In the future, when students of history are going to be studying the Sea Peoples, they are going to be using ancient inscriptions and artifacts to piece together this fascinating puzzle. So for this one, when students of history, it would be study the Sea Peoples, because it's going to be happening now in that context. So it would be present. So study. And then for the rest of it, I just wrote the options right here so we could keep it as is, or you have one of these. So in the future, it's saying like when students of history study the Sea Peoples, they, like in the future, so we have to use future tense. So it would be will use. So the last option. Okay, now we're going to do the final context and agreement review quiz for the chapter. And let's start with part 1 right here. Pebbles crunch beneath a farmer's boot. The sound of chirping birds mixes with distant city horns. James Thomas cultivates tomatoes and basil on a city rooftop. Laura Smith is growing organic lettuce on a balcony. Green City, a movement and online platform, highlights initiatives often recognized as urban agriculture champions, focusing on farming within concrete jungles. The efforts blending horticulture, I don't know how to pronounce that, with urban aesthetics, bringing patches of green to gray metropolitan spaces. These urban farmers not only aim to produce fresh local produce, but also to inspire city dwellers to reconsider the possibilities of their unused spaces. So this one's kind of like a mix of comma rules with verb stuff. So the effort, it would be C, the efforts blend, because we're talking about like multiple efforts, like that were all like referenced earlier. So I mean, it's not even changing whether it's plural or anything, but if it was, that's why it's efforts with an S. And then we would say that it would be in present, like just regular present, simple present tense. So it would have to be blend. Now, the one that people might mess up with, or that I would see people mess up with probably the most, would be choosing between B and C. So I'm gonna like kind of write it in to show you why it can't be B. So if it was B, it would have to be a comma here. We would get rid of that and it would say which blend. The efforts which blend horticulture with urban aesthetics, bringing patches of green to gray metropolitan spaces. Remember, we learned in the punctuation chapter that when you have comma around, this would be has to be the non-essential clause that you could cross out and form a sentence. If we do that, we don't have a complete sentence that makes sense. It would say the efforts bringing patches of green to gray metropolitan spaces, like you're waiting for them to continue. They haven't completed the thought. So it would have to be C. And then for number 7, the website flourished, evolving into a locus of urban agricultural production while also promoting eco-friendly practices. So this would be, a lot of people would get this wrong because they think that, I don't know, for some reason that you can't have comma ing here. I don't know why, because this is actually one of the punctuation rules, which says, part of one of the punctuation rules, which says that you can connect an independent clause, meaning like something that could be its own sentence, like we have here, the website flourished, with a dependent clause, evolving into a locus of urban agricultural production, yada, 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 with a comma. And one of the situations where that can happen is when you have a verbing modifier following that comma, like we have right here. So that would be the reasoning for why this is grammatically correct and why A should be the correct answer. No change. Okay, for number 11, it would be just no change, have been, because it's referring back to artifacts, which is plural. And so the only one that would be plural would be A, or like you could technically like delete the underlined portion, but if you delete it, then you don't have a complete sentence. So that doesn't work. So remember, one of the main reasons I called this the context and agreement chapter is because context is so important throughout the exam, especially with this kind of stuff. So we're going to read, technically you would read 2 above and below, but here we only have 2 above, and including the question. So let's start by reading at 2. So to answer this question, she placed, just lost my place. To answer this question, she placed tiny transmitters which monitor and record the butterfly's journey on a group of monarchs near Toronto, Canada. Her findings revealed that the monarch's journey was primarily driven by an internal biological clock that guides them. However, it also revealed that cold temperatures often, so it is supposed to be referencing her findings, like it's supposed to be replacing that portion that talks about her findings. So that's incorrect because it is singular. So we need something that's plural. So it should be they, D. And then if we go on to number 6, however, they also revealed that cold temperatures often results in a need to migrate to warmer environments. Results, results refers to cold temperatures here. And so that means since cold temperatures is plural, the verb tense has to match that. So results doesn't, because it's singular. So we would have to say that the correct choice would be J, because we would have present, because that's the present plural. So it would have to be J. Okay, for number 8, it says Dr. Hemingway took her observations and analyzed them in her research lab at the University of Ottawa. So took her observations and analyzed them. Let's see, recorded, took note of, observed. So remember, the whole underlined portion is what you have to be replacing. So a lot of people would get this wrong probably and pick like G or something, or like J, because they don't think about how observations is also underlined. So like if you just picked, for instance, G, it would say Dr. Hemingway recorded and analyzed them in her research lab at the University of Ottawa. Like that's very vague. We wouldn't know what it's talking about. Like we need that clarification of observations. So it would have to be F. Okay, now for number 9, conducting a series of controlled experiments and making potential threats to study the monarch's reactions. So that's not a complete sentence. So no on that one already. It's definitely not no change. So let's see the other options. Okay, conducting a series of controlled experiments. Hemingway's mimicry potential threats. No, Hemingway mimicked potential threats. Yes. Hemingway mimicked potential threats to study the monarch's reaction, because remember, it's like taking place, like this is happening in the past, like the experiments already happened, so it would be Hemingway mimicked. Okay, technically you would read 2 lines above, but it doesn't really matter for this question, so I'm not going to do that. Additionally, cooler temperatures during migration appears to slow them down, while warmer conditions seem to provide an energy boost. So the underlying portion has to be matching with cooler temperatures, which is plural. So it would have to be either H or J. And remember, you want to pick the, it's not just what is grammatically correct on its own. It's like out of the answer choices, what's grammatically correct and also the most concise option. So it would have to be H up here. Okay, another remarkable aspect of of the monarch's journey is their sense of direction. Using the sun as a compass, these butterflies navigates through this long. So already that's wrong because it's singular, referring to butterflies, which is plural. It has to match butterflies, which is plural. So it would have to be will it's have navigated, will navigate, or navigate. So it would be navigate because it has to be plural present tense. So it would be B. Okay, now we're on part 2, number 3 over here. So let's just read from in 2018. In 2018, at the age of 29, renowned astrophysicist Mia Roberts became the youngest woman to receive the Orion Award, an accolade for celestial navigation's most innovative contributors. Her area of study, precise patterns among stars and the science behind their movements, is so nuanced that they leave many skilled astronomers both perplexed and in awe. So her area of study is so nuanced that the portion that's underlined for number 3, it's referring to her area of study, which is singular, so it definitely can't be they. So the only one that would be singular would be C. So it leaves, because it has to refer to her area of study. So it would be C. Okay, now we're doing number 8. Mia is an astrophysicist whom thinks that constellations have their tails, and she avoids predicting what celestial revelation will emerge next. Okay, that's definitely not right. So Mia is an astrophysicist. It would be who thinks that constellations have their tails. So remember, there's that trick with like who versus whom. Like when we're referring to a person, it's gonna be like who or whom, or it could be like whose if we're trying to show like possession. But we're not, so it's gonna be either who or whom in this case. So then the trick for whether it's correct for who or whom is who would be correct if you could put he there and it works, or she, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not talking about in terms of like the exact sentence, just like next to the verb. So like you could say he thinks, so that means who would be correct. You couldn't say him thinks. So with whom, you try to replace it with him, and if it works, it would be whom. With who, you try to replace it with he, and if it works, then it would be, if he works, then it would be who, which you would say he thinks. That's what works here. So it would have to be who thinks, G. Okay, for number 9, it could be just helping or one of these. This perspective, helping her make discoveries so significant and unexpected that her peers describe it as groundbreaking moments in astronomy. So this perspective is singular, and let's see, and she avoids predicting this perspective. It has it would be has helped her make discoveries so significant and unexpected, because like it would be like it's already happened, like she's already made those discoveries. So it would be has helped. You couldn't say which helped, because then it's not a complete thought that makes sense, like it's not a complete sentence. And now for number 10, we could keep it as is with it or one of these options. So this perspective has helped her make discoveries so significant and unexpected that her peers describe it as groundbreaking moments in astronomy. So let's see, what is the underlined portion supposed to be referring to? So it's supposed to be referring to discoveries, which is plural. So it would have to be them. Okay, so now we're on number 13. Furthermore, several cosmic enigmas have held Mia's attention for years. By 2020, astronomers worldwide were curious about which cosmic mysteries the winning award's astrophysicists would delve into next. So by 2020, astronomers worldwide, it's fine as were curious, because they were curious in the past and there's multiple astronomers, so that's totally fine. It would just be no change. And then for number 14, it would be D, because you wouldn't say the winning awards astrophysicist. Like those words are supposed to be describing astrophysicists, so you would hyphenate them and put it as award winning. And the shortest grammatically correct answer would be D. So the award winning astrophysicist.